Welcome to the 2023 Chicago Auto Show. This is Car Parts and Exhaust Parts. This is a big year for the Chicago Auto Show with COVID restrictions lifted. We got to see the McCormick Center come alive again, and with that came a new wave of vehicles to experience. A lot of automakers brought their all this year, and we wanted to show you some of the highlights. Back in 2020, we made a video where I reviewed every manual car on offer. This year, we're doing it again. Taking the bottom spot on this list is a little bit of a shocker in the Toyota Mark V GR Supra. And I'm not just saying this to be a contrarian or to be a hater and be like, you guys love the Supra, so let me bash it really quick. I am a big Mark V fan. I think this car is pretty great. Um, I think it's a true successor to the line. It's one of the better sports cars on sale right now. It's pretty great, and it's become so much better now that they're offering a manual transmission with it. So I really can't hate on it that much. The reason why it's taking the bottom spot on this list is not because I think it's bad, but I just don't think it outshines some of the other cars on this list. And I think it has a few fatal flaws that make me kind of give us some side eye. So let's talk about that. For starters, this transmission is nice. It's very nice. This is a BMW transmission. So this is not an in-house Toyota job. This is manufactured by ZF. I'm pretty sure, like the vast majority, if not all, BMW transmissions. I'm not really a BMW guy, but I do believe that's the case. ZF is good. ZF is a very reputable brand. They make really good transmissions. They have for a very long time. So I fully believe that this transmission would be excellent out on the open road. But in the showroom, I have some gripes with it. I read an article from Car and Driver. It said that Toyota did have to do a serious amount of engineering to actually get this transmission to fit in the USDM spec of this engine. And they did change up some of the gear ratios and stuff. So there's some, like everything on the Supra, this is originally BMW, but Toyota's put a little spin on it and a little touch. And, ZF plus Toyota sounds like a good combo to me. So I believe this is probably a pretty dang solid transmission. The first thing that kind of makes me question it and feel a little iffy about it is the material on the shifter itself. So it has an Alcantara shift knob, which is a little strange because that's a vital touch point. And Alcantara is supposed to be durable, but I just see that wearing kind of poorly. I don't know, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'm way off the mark here, but Alcantara on the shift knob seems like a bad call for me. But I think it's kind of reflective of what this car is going for. It recognizes it's an expensive car. This is a nice car. So it's trying to be a little bit upmarket. And it feels great. It feels really good. Just talking about the interior of the car generally, it's very nice. Lots of leathers, lots of nice soft touch stuff. Everything feels really quality, really well built. And that includes the shifter and the shift linkage. It feels amazing. The shifter it's very well weighted. Perhaps the best weighted of any of the shifters that I tried. It feels pretty crisp. The throw is satisfyingly short. It feels pretty notchy, but I didn't find it to be have a necessarily special feel compared to some of the other transmissions. I did find that the stick itself is a little bit long. So, if I were to have one of these cars, one thing I might do is maybe put in, if not a short shifter kit, then something to shorten the actual length of the shifter itself, not necessarily the linkage. But other than that, not too many complaints there. I think the place where this car really gets hurt is in the clutch feel. I found the clutch to be pretty spongy, a little bit soft, and kind of rubbery. And it had a bit of dead throw, like a little bit of dead pedal at the beginning, which I did not like. It just kind of, that's not that dissimilar to some other cars, but it just kind of felt cheaper than perhaps it should have been for the price point, which left me feeling a little bit uneasy. I will say, talking about the pedals, the throttle and brake are pretty well positioned. It would be pretty easy to heel toe downshift in this car. It's very nice. It does have auto rev matching as a feature that you can turn on or turn off. So not that you would necessarily need to, but you could do it pretty well, which is great. Toyota's thinking about the drivers. It's a well set up car. But yeah, the clutch feel is just not there. And that, I think, is where this car really gets hurt overall. I will say that I absolutely adore the gauges in the steering wheel in this car. I think they're some of the best in the business. That big central gauge and that really nice steering wheel is just I don't know. I just love it about the Mark V Supra. It's a really great aspect of that car. The exterior is also really, really beautiful. I know some people have some divisive opinions on it, but I think it's great. I think it's a really nice exterior. I think it's very pretty. The materials are amazing throughout. Just like a lot of other sports cars in this price point. Take the Camaro as perhaps the most infamous example. The visibility is pretty bad. So that was another downside for me. I must say that my opinions on this car are a little bit biased because when I got in it, I don't know if they had removed the battery or disabled the battery was dead or something, but you couldn't actuate the seat adjustment. So I was miles away from the pedals. I was kind of sitting in an uncomfortable position, so that may have made the car appear to have worse visibility than it actually did, may have made me just kind of feel generally more uncomfortable than perhaps I would have been if it were all properly adjusted and I was seated correctly. I feel pretty confident about putting it down here in the sixth spot on this list. It's a great car. It's an amazing car, but I don't know. It just failed to impress that much when it came to the manual transmission. So that's the Supra. Taking the fifth spot on my list is a car that I found a little bit difficult to place, and that's the Acura Integra. Now, this car has generated quite a lot of publicity, both positive and negative feelings all across the internet. I'm going to summarize my take really quick. A five-door Civic Si manual transmission based hatchback should not be something we scoff at, ever. That's a great thing from Honda. This is lovely. It's a gift that we even have this. So let's not be too cynical about the name. Sure, it's not a DC2, whatever. Get over it. It's not a '90s Integra. It's not trying to be. It's its own thing. It's very cool. It's great. Just live with it. It's pretty amazing for what it is. The fact that we have a car like this coming out, period, is nice. And for what it is, it's pretty good. It's a five-door Civic Si with a nice interior. It's good. Just live with it. Rant over. So this one was kind of interesting. It brought some neat characteristics to the table. Normally, I would say Honda's pretty hard to beat in the transmission game. Very few companies really come close. Honda has a very unique feel to their transmissions, and some days I love it, and some days I'm not the biggest fan. I tend to describe it as kind of toyish. If you go back and look at my video that I did about the 2020 Auto Show, the Si and the Type R both had this to different degrees, and every Honda, particularly every Honda clutch I've ever felt, has felt very light and smooth, super easy to depress. Like it wants you to just slam on that clutch. Just put your foot straight to the firewall. Just boom, boom, boom. Like you want to slam shift this car. Interestingly, though, in the Integra, this very light clutch is paired with the heaviest shifter of the day, an absolute thunker, a chunker, an absolute doinker of a shifter. It was remarkable how stiff it was. And it created an interesting effect. So I found the shifter to be kind of harsh, it had a lot of resistance. I think what they were going for here was a more like upmarket luxury feel, something that felt a little bit more durable and a little bit less boy racer like they have with the Si. I think it works, but also it wasn't my favorite. It wasn't my favorite design choice. I kind of prefer a shifter that feels more rowable. This just felt like you were kind of arm wrestling the car, which I didn't love. I will say that the throw was pretty short, so that was nice. One other thing is the shifter location was way over to the driver's side. Like it was really biased over to driver. When you like stir the pot, when you're stirring it towards you, so over towards first gear, you have like maybe an inch or two of travel. But then over towards like fifth and sixth gear, you have like 3 inches of throw. So that should like demonstrate just how like off center it was, which is, I think it's a theme amongst relatively modern Hondas. If I remember correctly, I think that's just a thing they do now, and I think it's just supposed to bias towards the driver a little bit. It's nice, but I kind of prefer a more centered shifter. So I don't know about that design choice as well. Like I said, the clutch is pretty traditional, it's pretty light, but just the combination of that really heavy kind of strange shifter and that really, really light clutch was not something that I loved. It felt conflicting. Like I want to just run through these gears really quick, but the shifter is super duper heavy and stiff. Now I imagine it would probably feel pretty different after a couple 100 miles of break-in, letting those bearings kind of wear in a little bit, and just spending some time on the open road would probably be good for it. But from the perspective of sitting on a showroom floor, I didn't love how this felt. I will say that the interior was pretty great. I also sat in a new Honda Civic, couple new Honda Civics, and the new Accord. And I love the whole new design language that Honda's going for with the interior. It feels just incredible. I think it's my favorite new wave of interiors right now. The materials are all, super duper solid, amazingly solid. And the interior of the Integra is much the same. It's similar, but just a little bit better. And it also has Honda's new steering wheel design, which I think is amazing. I really like the new shape of their airbag, the emblem placement, just the feel of the steering wheel in your hands is all really, really good. So that's a nice thing. The brakes feel solid, and so does the throttle pedal. You can't completely heel toe, which is a bit of disappointment because typically Honda has pretty dang nice pedal placement, even in their commuter cars. But this one just wasn't what I was really looking for. If you like a lot of thunk, then this is definitely for you. It was all around pretty good, but I just found it a little bit strange. And some of the other cars that had similar feel just ended up beating it out. So we're gonna talk about those now.
Well, it's probably pretty similar to the Jersey.
Nice. Man. Gene. Next, we have a vehicle very near and dear to my heart, and it truly pains me to put it this low on the list, but the Subaru WRX is getting the fourth spot, because overall this was a bit of a letdown, but it still has a lot of really great fundamentals that are hard to ignore and hard to deny, so it still has a lot of merit. But let's talk about it. Overall, I felt this car was a little bit too compromised. The really tragic thing about this car is that there is no STI. There is no longer an STI. With the death of the EJ comes the death of the STI trim for the WRX line, which is truly tragic. We'll have it back one day, probably in electrified form, but it's very sad for now not having an STI because you can feel and you can see the potential in this car. You can tell that they were developing this car. There's a blank spot for the driver controlled center differential. There's clearly this car is set up with a little bit of compromise baked in so that the STI could be that next stage, and they just never made it, which is really a shame. The throw on the shifter was just a little bit too long. You could tell they left some space in there so that the STI could shorten it up just a little bit too long, especially compared to the BRZ, which I'm going to talk about soon, but just a little bit long. Still felt very nice. Felt very similar to the BRZ shifter. Great. It would be an amazing 10 out of 10 shifter if the throw was STI spec. That's what I have to say about it. It was really well weighted. The clutch was very meaty, but a little bit mushy. So it kind of felt like they were trying to make it a little bit softer, a little bit more commutery. And as a WRX driver, I can tell you that the clutches on these things are pretty heavy. That's just kind of something they're known for. And this one had that, but it felt softened up. It felt like a little bit more nice, I guess, a little bit more upmarket. It felt mushier. Not like the STI that I sat in 2020, which felt pretty firm clutch. Pretty nice, pretty high quality, pretty solid. It wasn't on that level. I will say it has a lovely interior. Say what you will about that big center display. I also am not in love with it, but the interior of the WRX overall was really nice. The seating position was just fantastic. All the interior materials felt really excellent. It felt like a great place to be. It feels very grown up for the WRX. It feels like a civilized cockpit. It's great. It's really, really nice. The steering wheel really surprised me. It felt very nice. It felt, more upmarket than I was kind of expecting. I think, despite it feeling better quality-wise, I think I prefer the slightly more D shape of the last generation, the VA steering wheel, just a little bit. It's great. It's lovely. I did find it to be surprisingly difficult to heel toe in this car, and I'm not sure why, because normally the WRX is one of the best cars for that. But it's just because the brake pedal was a little bit too close to me. If that weren't the case, then I think it would be very good. I still think it's perfectly doable, just maybe slightly suboptimal. Otherwise, it was a pretty good pedal setup. It was pretty nice. It had a manual handbrake. That's another great thing that I can put out there. Other than that, it was just, I wanted to put it higher, but it was just too middle of the road. See, if this existed and the STI existed, I'd be able to say, well, the STI tops the charts, but this is just, it's the nice middle of the road. But no, there's no STI. This is just it. It's just kind of whatever, kind of mediocre. But I love the WRX, and it has all the great fundamentals. It's a real driver's car. Just came off a little disappointing. The exterior, I've said this before, I think, the exterior is a lot better than people give it credit for. I think Subaru actually got a lot of things right with this design. I will say the back bumper, though. The back bumper is just unforgivable. And something about the rear proportions, something about the rear end of this car is just not right. It's just a little bit too pinched or something. I don't know. But I think this car's great, particularly in this color. I just wish they did something different with the rear bumper and that cladding. But otherwise, great car. I just wish they had done a little more. I wish they had been a little bit less safe with this. It could have been perfect. Just, I have so much to say about the WRX. I'm not going to say it here, though. Maybe that's a video for another time.
Feels funny on your fingers.
Funny.
We love the jaw.
The jaw. The Honda jaw. I'd wager that the VW Golf GTI deserves the third place spot on this list. This is a big departure from where I put it back in 2020, which is at the very bottom of the list, but I think it more than deserves this placement. Overall, this vehicle took a little bit of a different approach as compared to some of the other ones. It seems like a lot of vehicles these days that include a manual transmission as an option are really pushing like the sporty, like very boy racer kind of image and persona. This car, I think, deviated from that a little bit because VW is still trying to position this as kind of a light luxury, moderately luxurious type of good. And I think that shows. I think it changes the character of this car's shifter pretty dramatically. But I think it's for the better, because I don't think this car is trying too hard to be super firm and super harsh and notchy and whatever. And I think it actually has a lot of merit, ends up being more pleasant than some of these other cars that I think are maybe trying too hard to be sporty. Because the GTI doesn't have anything to prove. GTI just is sporty. It's a really good value proposition when it comes to sports cars or sporty hatchbacks. It's a staple of the genre. It's pretty great. To summarize my experience with the car's shifter, the clutch was very heavy for the first 50% and then it just kind of let out for the bottom 50%, which is fine. I prefer a little bit more of a linear, firm clutch, but it worked well. It didn't feel like toyish like the Hondas. It felt good, but I would have preferred more linearity. Shifts I found really buttery and easy. It was very smooth to kind of get it into each gate. It felt more like a commuter-oriented setup, something more akin to like the 2006 Honda Civic I've talked about on this channel, than say the BRZ or the Integra, which I'll talk about the BRZ. But it was more of like a buttery, smooth kind of shifter operation, but it was still a relatively short throw, definitely longer than some of the others, but it still felt very good and quite precise. It was a little bit more slop, a little bit more play than some of the other cars, but it made up for that by being a more pleasant kind of buttery shifting experience. So it loses out some precision. It's not a race car shifter, but I think it's actually good. It's good for that. It admits that it's not an ultra performance vehicle. It's a commuter car that's sporty, and because of that, I feel like this would be a very pleasant car to drive. It would be something it's fun, throwable, something that I would want to get in and drive it to work and have a good time driving it to work, and not feel like I'm driving, a race car or a performance car. It's just a fun car that's nice on the road. And I think that's great. I think GTI buyers really look for that kind of car. And I think this hits the mark perfectly. I found the driving posture to be really, really good. Everything in the car felt sophisticated and light luxury. I will say I hated the terrible, terrible infotainment system and the capacitive touch buttons. They look awful. They feel awful to the touch. Hate that. Volkswagen needs to be done with that.
It's nice.
Current worst infotainment.
Beep, bop, boop, boop, boop.
I don't know. I know what I'm doing.
Yeah, it doesn't give you any feedback.
But talking about just the shifter and the clutch, I feel like I could row gears for hours. It would be a great car to actually just commute like to and from work in, and then maybe autocross or maybe track sometimes. And I think it would fill that niche perfectly. And it's something I would want to get into and use and have a good time doing so. You can only kind of heel toe. Talking about the pedal box, you can't really get your heel all the way onto the throttle, so that's a little bit of a letdown, but it's okay. Everything about this car is pretty nice. I like the new exterior. It's pretty good. I really, really, really love the fake golf ball shifter thing. It's so cute. And the plaid seats is a massive plus for me. I absolutely adore that. This car's got a lot of character. It's really great. And according to Car and Driver, it's pretty quick on track this year, so that's also a big plus. Yes, all around great here. It ranked higher than I would have expected, but I like it. It admits that it's not a race car. It's not trying to be a race car. It's trying to be a pleasant, quick car to drive. I think because it admits what it is, it gets some bonus points for me. And I'm shocked to be putting it over the WRX, but I've gotta for this listing.
Feels good. Feels solid. It's nice. It's good. It's a good car.
Taking the number 2 spot on this list is the Subaru BRZ slash Toyota GR86. Unfortunately, Toyota did not bring an example of their car to this auto show that we could find, so we just stuck with the BRZ example, but they're practically the same car, only slight tuning differences between them. This car acted as a bit of a benchmark, not only because it was one of the first cars that we sat in, but also because it's just kind of an industry standard. This is, classic format, classic layout. It's kind of the best of the bunch when it comes to this price bracket and this clade of cars. And also, it's not too dissimilar from its incarnation that I sat in 2020. But it's certainly updated and improved in several areas, except there's one that I think it's actually a little bit worse in, but we'll talk about that. So to start off, this probably has the best clutch of the whole bunch that we reviewed. Better than the WRX. It had a better return. It was a little bit firmer, a little bit nicer of a clutch feel, but similar feel to the WRX. Just a little bit more hardcore, a little bit more like race tuned, I would describe it as, which is nice and refreshing. Felt really, really good. Talking about the pedal box, it was a little bit small, but it's a lot easier to heel toe in this car than WRX. It may very well have been the easiest car to heel toe in. It's certainly up there, which is very, very nice. Compact pedal box, but still really, really good dynamics. Good pedal position. Everything felt really nice. The shifter was incredibly short and super snappy. It only barely loses out to the first place spot, and I'll talk about that. But it was very good, very responsive shifter, very quick, very snappy. Felt really solid, very considerable. There's no vagueness. It's super precise, super easy to actuate. Really great. The back seats and the trunk, I was surprised by how completely useless they are. I knew the back seats were terrible, but the trunk is just incredibly small. The one thing that I think this car loses out on compared to its previous incarnation is the interior, actually. There are aspects of the interior that I like more, like the steering wheel and all of the kind of materials feel a little bit better. But I will say that the buttons on the center stack and some of the switch gear does not feel as nice, which is interesting. Like the toggle switches felt kind of cheap and plasticky and chintzy, and just like if I push them the wrong way, they're gonna break. And I didn't like that much. I thought the previous generation had actually really nice switchgear. That was kind of strange to see. It does have a manual handbrake still, which is a huge plus. Always a huge plus. Overall, I concluded that it would probably be a better driver's car than WRX just based off of feel and pedal placement and layout. The WRX is kind of tuned down. It's going for more of a GTI type thing where it's supposed to be kind of a sportier commuter car, I feel. Whereas this feels more legit, more hardcore, more I'm an enthusiast's car. It's a little disappointing for the WRX, but I gotta put it there. I really love the exterior on the new BRZ. I also really love the exterior on the GR86. I think they're both great. BRZ is a little bit happier. There are some things that I think the BRZ actually looks better in person than it does when you see it online, which is a little bit surprising. There are just some little accents, particularly with the side profile, that I don't think are really translated that well online, and I think it looks really great. This one in silver was pretty clean, pretty nice. So really lovely exterior. It felt pretty boy racer. Very cool, very cute. Made me feel like I could have some serious fun in it. So overall, great shifter. One of the best clutch feels of the day. Felt like a performance car, felt like a driver's car. I don't really have anything bad to say about it. It just narrowly loses out to our first place spot. And at long last, we have our winner, and this car more than deserves it. We're giving it to the GR Corolla from Toyota. This thing blew me away. When I first saw the announcement for this thing, I was like, this is going to be amazing. This is going to be one of the best cars we've seen in a long time. This is going to be a defining car for this generation, and it's going to be a defining car for internal combustion because we're not going to get a whole lot of other cars like this down the line. And after sitting in one of these, I have to say, it's pretty amazing. And I'm really happy that Toyota decided to make this. It was really a shame that we never did get the GR Yaris, but here we are getting very similar platforms. So let's go with Toyota. Just awesome. Thanks. Love it. Let's talk about why it wins for me here. It's probably got the best pedals. Same sort of pedals as the WRX and the BRZ. Same style that the WRX has had since, time immemorial. Those metal with the grippy bits in them. Really great pedal setup. The brake is a little close to the driver, but other than that, the layout is perfect. The spacing between the pedals is great. It's possible to heel toe. It's not as constricted as the BRZ, so it feels really good. And it's precise and nice and well spaced. So big plus for the pedals. They all feel amazing. I must say that the BRZ does beat this in clutch feel just slightly. The GR is firm and then it just kind of goes. But it's linear and consistent. I just prefer the firmer feel of the BRZ clutch. The BRZ clutch is kind of firm all the way through. It's not the same firmness, but I don't like when clutches just kind of give out completely, and the GR does that a bit at the end, but I'm glad that it at least feels consistent and quality. So, big win there. Better than the Supra's clutch, I would say, was the other Toyota clutch I tried that day. Everything about the car feels solid and purpose-built. Not really cheap. Not trying to replicate anything. It feels like the real deal. Let's put it that way. Everything about the car, particularly the clutch and shifter setup, just feels like the real deal. By far, this car had the best shifter feel. Unequivocally, this one won. Super, super short throw, coupled with a very, very notchy feel. It was very heavy and considerable, but it wasn't too stiff by any means. It felt really well balanced and nice, and like you could row through the gears, but also it's gonna notch into each gate and seat really perfectly. The shifter fit perfectly in my hand. It felt natural. It felt really, really nice. Everything was well weighted and well proportioned. Again, maybe the Supra was slightly better weighted as far as the shifter, but this thing was just stellar. It has a god tier interior. Just amazing. I love cars like this. It takes the WRX philosophy and perfects it, okay? Because it's just a Corolla. It's just a Corolla on the inside. It's cloth. You got cloth. You got polymer. It's basic. It's simple. You got physical touch buttons. It's nothing crazy. It's just an economy car on the inside. You know, you're paying for the economy car stuff. You're not paying for the luxury fluff. You get the economy car interior, and when you get along with it is great driving dynamics and great driving feel. It cuts down costs. It's simple. It's lightweight. It makes sense. It's not overdone. It's not trying to be a sofa. It's just a car. It's just a car, and it feels lovely. It's great. This is the best interior of this kind at the show. WRX is trying to be a sofa right now. It's trying to be comfortable, luxury, Audi, whatever. This car is doing what the WRX did 20 years ago and saying, no, this is just a base Corolla, but you get a great turbocharged engine, a great all-wheel drive system, a great manual transmission. You can throw a skid pad on it, take it to the stages, and have fun, in theory, whatever. This perfects that philosophy, and it's amazing. I rave about it. It's beautiful. So the interior is basic. It's simple, but it's not draconian, right? It's still quality. It's Toyota quality. Nothing moves, nothing rattles where it shouldn't. It all feels really solid. And you have some really nice screen displays. You have some digital gauge clusters, which are really great. They display some really cool information. You can see your power distribution between front and back wheels. You have a little boost gauge. It looks like a really nice setup, and judging by Toyota's other digital gauges that they have in their line, this is sure to be a pretty great setup. So very, very happy with that. Another nice thing, it still has a manual handbrake, so you're not dealing with an electronic handbrake. True driver's car stuff right there. Really, really lovely. Driving posture is certainly more economy focused than, say, the BRZs. You're a little bit less reclined and sat down low in the car, but it still feels really good. And for a car like this, I kind of prefer that more upright driving posture. So really lovely there. You can shift from outside the car. Cool little Easter egg. For some reason, the linkage or the linkage is exposed within the hood. There's enough space that you can just reach down there and mess with it. You could do it a little bit on the Acura, on the Integra as well, but it was a lot harder to get down there, and it was all oily and gross. But on the GR Corolla, for some reason, there's a plastic cover on it, and you can get right down to it. You can go through each gear just fine from outside the car, under the hood. We had some fun freaking some people out inside the car by moving the shifter around while they were in there. It was really good. But yeah, amazing car. I would sell my firstborn child for this. The pricing isn't terrible. MSRP is not bad, but dealer markup is bad. And if this car were just a little bit cheaper, if it were a little bit more attainable, if Toyota if Toyota marketed them more and made more of them, that would help a lot. But I think they should, maybe Honda is really going for more of like a premium. This is a track toy type of philosophy with the Type R. I think the GR Corolla should be aiming a little lower than that. Like, this is more of an everyman's sports car or everyman's hot hatch, and it's not really trying to compete with the Type R, but it will still go toe to toe with the Type R, which is kind of how the WRX was back in its heyday. It's, some other cars that were above it that were more purpose-built, the WRX would still go right up with them and take them, but it was cheaper. It was priced lower. It was more attainable. There were a lot more of them. I think the GR Corolla should fill that niche, but I don't think Toyota's posturing it that way, so we'll see what ends up happening. But amazing car. Hopefully, I'm manifesting this right now. Hopefully one day I will at least drive one of these. If not drive, hopefully own, because this is beautiful. This is amazing. Rest in peace to the STI, but honestly, given how Subaru is these days, this car was going to beat it regardless. So, amazing. It's got that little turbocharged 3-cylinder, which makes like 300 horsepower. It's ridiculous. Don't know how they engineered that. Love it. Love it. Quirky little power plant, great manual transmission. Surely some of the best dynamics in the business, all with a Toyota badge. Like, what more could you want? I don't know if you can tell, I really love this car. I'm deeply, madly in love with this car, and it's got to take the first spot. And I'm not just saying that because I love everything else about the car, but I really genuinely do think that the shifter is just next level and beats everything else on this list. And because of that, because of my experience with the shifter, it's just further cemented itself in my mind as this is a car of a generation. This is amazing. And I'm saying all this about a Corolla, the state of the car market these days. So that's the list. GR Corolla tops it out.
But what if I want that car? I like the color on that one more. I want to buy that one instead. I can't drive manual. 4 is more than 3.
So that's it as far as manual equipped cars that we could actually sit in and review, but there were some that were locked or unavailable, which I wanted to talk about and give a little shout out to. To start off, we have the Chevy Camaro, which I think was the only manual equipped car Chevy actually brought this year. The Camaro is pretty solid all around. I've never sat in a manually equipped one. I have sat in a manual equipped Mustang. I talked about that in my 2020 video, and I didn't love it. So if it's anything like that, then it's probably not fantastic. Although I have heard from people on the internet that these are pretty solid manual transmissions. So who knows? I wish they would have let us sit in it, but whatever. Thanks, Chevy. Next, we got the Honda Civic Type R and the Honda Civic SI. The SI was just completely missing in action, which is a little disappointing because they brought it last time, and they had a lot of Civics this round, so it's weird to see it missing, but, so be it. They brought the Integra. The Integra is basically the same car. I'm going to assume that maybe the clutch and shifter are a little bit lighter and more throwable in the Civic Si. If that's the case, then I'd probably like it more than the Integra, but it's probably not dissimilar, so it's probably a solid transmission. Back in 2020, I liked it, but I found the clutch to be a little bit too toyish. Same goes for the Type R. I liked it a lot, but the clutch is a little bit too toyish, so not my favorite. But Honda transmissions in general are truly next level, so you can't really hate on it. Type R was here this year, but they had it, fenced off on a pedestal and whatever. I like how it looks. I like that they've gone for a more understated type of look. I feel like it's more true to its roots. You can really tell it's a Civic. I feel like it's not trying to be like an Evo or a WRX. It's kind of its own deal. And it looks really nice. Wish they would have let us sit in it, but what I've heard is it has the exact same transmission as the previous generation, just slightly improved, I think is what Honda's saying. So it's probably much the same, which it's a great transmission, so can't really dog it. Next up, we have the Elantra N from Hyundai, and I sat in a Veloster back in 2020 and really liked that transmission. I didn't think it was quite as refined as some of the others. And I've heard that the Elantra N is basically a lot of the good things about the Veloster N, but turned up to 11. So I wish they had brought the manual example, but they only brought us the auto and the race car, which is cool, but I would have liked to sit in and test out the manual. That would have been really cool, because I'm sure it's actually excellent. These things are setting faster lap times than GTIs and WRXs, so they've got to be pretty good, and people really like them, so I wish they would have let us do that. Probably the big one that everyone wants to know about, and I really wanted to sit in, is the Nissan Z, the new Nissan Z. And they did bring both an auto and a manual example, but in order to sit in the manual, you had to wait in a line that was about 40 people long and fill out a survey. And by the time we got to the Nissan booth, it was already 4 o'clock, and I was like, screw that, I'm not doing that. So screw you, Nissan, for making us either wait in line or check out. That's kind of annoying. I have seen the Z at a previous auto show I went to. I did see the Z, and it was nice. It's a good car. I like it quite a bit. I have a whole news video where I talk about the Z quite a bit. Great car. I'm sure the manual transmission is pretty solid. Supposedly it's like most closely related to the 370s, but I'm sure it's great. I would have loved to have sat in it and given you guys an opinion, because it was kind of that was like on the top of my list going into the show. The Z and the GR Corolla were the two that I really wanted to try out, and they got to do one of them. So that's a real shame, but I blame Nissan. Also, there were some Toyota NASCARs, which I think were H pattern equipped before they got welded up, and I sat in one of those and they're neat. Anyway, that's what we got this year. It's a little disappointing. I was hoping for a few more. It was kind of lacking in manuals. There's a noticeable lack of Mazda this year, which is really disappointing. I don't know where they were at with the Miata. I heard they were maybe at the Virginia Auto Show. I don't know why they didn't show up at the Chicago Auto Show, but whatever. It's disappointing. Also, no Porsche. No Porsche to be found. Very strange. Really only BMW and Volkswagen showed up as far as German camp people. But yeah, that's it. Those are the honorable mentions. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. I know it's a doozy, a little bit of a long one, but thought I'd talk about the auto show a little bit. Yep, that's it.